Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Zechariah 11 and 12. Now, there's a lot of theatre in these two chapters. Now, I'm down here in the Western Cape. This is Greenpoint Park behind me here. And you'll see in the corner there is the Greenpoint Rugby Stadium where lots of theatre takes place down here in the Western Cape. Perfect for studying this chapter. Open your doors, Lebanon, so that fire may devour your cedars. Now, these doors of Lebanon are the mountain passes between Lebanon and Israel. And most commentators say this was fulfilled through the Roman invasion, not the Babylonian one, but the Roman, as the Romans came through those mountain passes. Then, what Zechariah does is he begins to act out the job of a shepherd. So I'm assuming they're literal sheep in front of him. He takes literal staves and he says, this is what the Lord my God says. Shepherd the flock marked for slaughter. Then I took two staves, one called favor, which described the blessing of God over Israel. So he was holding this one staff in his hand, and the other union. So he has a shepherd standing amongst his sheep. He's got two staves in his hand, and this union described the union, the harmony in Israel and Judah at the time. And he says in verse 8, and in 1 month, he says, I will get rid of 3 shepherds. Now, most commentators say, well, we don't really know if there were actual individual personalities talking about. Most say it's the prophets, priests, and kings. He says those are the shepherds, the prophet shepherds, the priest shepherds, and the king shepherds. I'm getting rid of all of them. Then I took my staff called favor and I broke it. So it's this demonstration of a breaking of the blessing of God as a revoking of the covenant. And then he says, then I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. Now, 30 pieces of silver is significant. If you go back into further history books in the Bible, it represents the price of a slave. And so they're basically saying Zechariah, pretending to be a shepherd, is paid this measly wage of a slave. And then the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price at which they valued me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them to the potter at the house of the Lord. Now, this is an extraordinary prophecy about Judas, the false shepherd who was paid for betraying Jesus. That's exactly what happens. Amazing. That Judas even throws it down in the house of the Lord, the amount that he had agreed to betray Jesus for. Matthew 27:9 interestingly says that Jeremiah prophesied this, not Zechariah. So most commentators say what Zechariah was doing here was repeating Jeremiah's prophecy. But basically, the potter's field was a useless piece of land that potters used to throw their discarded shards of pottery into. You couldn't grow anything there. It was just like rubble. It was a rubble heap of pottery, which is exactly, what Jesus did. He bought a rubbish field, you and me, and our brokenness, and there's incredible symmetry, symbolism here, as Jesus buys brokenness, disaster in you and me, and redeems it all. And then he play acts the foolish shepherd again, and he breaks the other staff called union, and he says things are going to be winding up in big trouble. Now, Zechariah chapter 12, he says, I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. And he's basically saying the surrounding people around Israel are going to want Israel. They're going to fight over Israel. And we know that today, the Arab people around Jerusalem have a passion for Jerusalem. Muslims claim it's their third most famous city, religious city, although it's not even mentioned in the Quran. In later times, Islamic rulers have wanted it, for expediency and political gain. But it basically says that people around will be fighting over Israel. And it's exactly happening today, isn't it? You know, people deciding, thinking they can decide the fate of Israel, whereas history points to the Jews as having the historical right over Israel. I mean, even our country has its opinion on Israel. And then from verse 10, it says, and I will pour out in the house of David, the habits of Jerusalem, the spirit of grace and supplication, talking about the coming of Jesus, the grace of Jesus coming into Jerusalem. And they will look on me, the one they've pierced. Remember, they pierced with a crown of thorns. They pierced him in his side, and they will mourn for the one who mourns. And this is a basic indication that Israel is eventually going to be saved. Romans, also Paul in the book of Romans prophesied that, didn't he? That thousands and millions of Jews are going to come to faith. The one they pierced, the one they crucified, the one they rejected, they are ultimately going to mourn his death and repent and turn and come to faith in Jesus. I think that's what the end of chapter 12 is all about.